Right, so tonight we have two fabulous spiritual disciplines of the labyrinth, the prayer labyrinth, and centering prayer.
You were being facetious.
Well, I mean, they are fabulous for those who enjoy that sort of thing.
I'm just going to sit here quietly.
I mean, they are absolutely legitimate spiritual practices, and there are many people who use them and swear by them, and they just don't happen to be. The labyrinth, I would say, is something that sort of speaks to me in a way. Centering prayer, I have a very hard time with, and I'm sorry for anyone who's going back and watching this later. I just don't have a good relationship with it, and that's me. That's all. That's me. That's just, as my wife would say, that is just not my spirituality.
And that's because of the silence. I think you mentioned.
Yeah, I think the silence has a lot to do with it. Although, you know, in a labyrinth setting, silence to me is very different than in a centering prayer setting. And I think the difference is you're still active in the labyrinth.
I have to move.
Body is still moving. You're still doing something. Centering prayer, you're not. Which for some people is great. You know, yoga. Yoga is a spiritual discipline, but your body is in motion, right?
Well,
sometimes not. I mean, if you're holding a stretch, if you're holding a position, yeah. No, but you're not. But you're going to come out of that, and you're going to go to something else. I mean, in a lot of ways, if you look at even the martial arts, I mean, that in itself is a spiritual discipline, right? In a matter of it. It's not so much combat as it is positions, right? But it can be used as combat, and that's a whole different thing. But
well, and in yoga, it's all about the breathing too.
Right, and breathing's important, right?
Yeah, and as a singer, I always appreciate that.
There's a labyrinth.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what you call a tracing labyrinth or a finger labyrinth.
Looks like a coaster.
Because
that's really cool. Where'd you get that, Jeff?
It looks like a Belgian waffle that you can.
Got it from Gomer's.
Ah.
Well, if you don't know what to get Jim for Christmas,
that would be it.
A coaster. Yeah, it's from the bookstore, Valerie says. So.
Oh, really?
Hurry up and get your Christmas.
Well, I don't think we carry them anymore.
Oh, so they're not being carried. They've been discontinued, so they're collected.
Oh, shoot.
But that is what you would refer to as a finger labyrinth.
Yeah.
So you have the stick, and so instead of walking, you're doing the same procedure, just using your hands to move the stick through it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing you could do with it, if it had a jewel in the middle, you could put it on a stick and set it up, and when the sun hits it the right way, Indiana Jones will find where the ark is buried.
We're never going to get through this tonight.
This is just what we needed.
We're going to look at some different labyrinth. That one in particular, hold that up again, Jeff, if you don't mind. That is a particular form of the labyrinth. You can tell by the center of it. Because I was looking at them today, and I'm not going to be able to tell you that, but we'll pull some up in a bit and look at them. But it has a particular name for that pattern.
It looks like it's almost.
I think it's like the one at church.
Gaelic.
Yeah, it looks like the one that they put out at church.
That we walk through.
Yeah.
So we have one.
Yeah,
we do.
That's printed on a mat of some sort.
Right, and they put it in Founders during Holy Week.
It really covers very much of the Founders main floor.
Yeah, nice. We had one. Well, let's talk about it first, and then I'll go into that. So, a lot of times when I don't know about you, when we think of a labyrinth, I think of the mythological figure of a, what is it, a minotaur or a,
Minotaur, yeah.
Yeah,
that, and it's a scary thing, but that's more of a maze, because if you build a maze, it's deceiving. There's a way through, but there's tricks, right? A labyrinth is not a maze. It's not deceiving. There is a clear path to the center and a clear path out. Now, it may have some twists and turns along the way. There may be a different way out than there is in, based on how it's built, but it's not there to trick you. So
Right.
the cognitive being is not that you have to spend your time figuring out where you're going. In the physical sense, it's figuring out where you're going in a spiritual sense. So we have this pattern that is formed, and several of them have names because of where they were first created. Chartres in France is a famous one that people will copy. Grace Cathedral in San Francisco has one, and I don't know if it's their own pattern or not. It's based on somebody else's, but they've been around a long time. They predate Christianity, and yet, like a lot of things in Christianity, Christians have adopted and embraced the symbol and have made it they've sort of Christianized it by using it for this form of discipline, right? So how is a labyrinth used? Has anyone actually done one? I mean, you say we put one out in Holy Week, although we didn't this year. So you have done it.
Yeah, we've in fact been to Grace Cathedral.
And done theirs.
Was there a labyrinth at the Washington Cathedral when we were there too?
I don't remember one being there.
I don't remember
I don't
that.
think so.
But there's certainly, we've been at Grace.
We've done the one at our cathedral as part of the way, and then it was done during Lent as well. It was out at Lent. There's one at our alma mater outside Bethany College. I don't think I'll get Jim to ever do that, but it's there for students.
And so basically there's 3 steps to it, right? There's the going in, the moving to the center. There's the being in the center, and then there's the going forth or coming out, although it'd really be more going forth. So as you move in towards the center, the idea is you empty yourself, you rid yourself of worldly attachments, and you contemplate a question, or you contemplate something that you're coming to God with. So moving to that center then represents a movement toward God with the burning question, whatever the burning question is, right? So you empty yourself, you get rid of worldly things, you move to the center. In the center, then, how did we put it last week? We were talking about the chewing, the chewing,
Savoring.
yeah, and then so you get to the middle. Now you're kind of in that savoring part where you are with God in the center, and you can sort of release that question into that center being, and be in that relationship with God, and you can linger there as much as you want to reflect on that relationship with God as you pray and as you ask the question or whatever it is you're bringing to God. Then you move out. You move out into the world again. I'm reading a thing here that says, as you walk out, you walk with Jesus back into places of ministry as a renewed person. So you return now with whatever you gathered from this experience, whatever it has worked within you, to now take that back to the world, right? But without picking those worldly attachments back up, I would think you sort of let those go. Now, how can you serve in the world, right? So tell me about your experiences. Is that kind of what you did, or how you went about it? If you, I mean, and I don't want to hear if you fell down in the process. Just
I don't think, as I recall, I don't think we were given really any directions. Do you remember that?
Well, I wasn't listening.
if they did, you didn't hear them.
Right.
Jim left his attention in the middle.
So he was just rolling his eyes and going, "Oh, do we have to do?" But anyway, I wish we had had more, just an explanation.
Yeah, this would have been a helpful preface.
Yeah, absolutely. The part that I remember a lot is maybe there were too many of us. It was crowded, and so you'd meet somebody on the path you were going, and they were coming, and you couldn't get past each other. I mean, and that was distracting.
You need a mediator of some sort there to say, only one person on the ride at one time, and you've got to wait your turn.
Yeah, really.
We were actually just doing it as part of one of the sessions for the way. Is that what was going on? So you were all doing it at once?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was a pretty good sized group, as I recall. So there were probably, 8 to 10 people on, and we didn't all start together, obviously, but it still was kind of cumbersome.
That would be hard. The only time I've done it is in Holy Week, and I don't remember anybody being in there with me, which was good.
Well, that would be more ideal, I think.
So we had one in Florence outside, and it was there was a garden area, and we simply called it the Labyrinth Garden, and it was brick. So the whole floor of this area, I mean, there were gardens, there were shrubberies and boxwoods and flowers and things like that, but in the middle was brick, and in the brick was different colored brick that formed the labyrinth. So you could walk on that different colored brick and do the labyrinth. The problem was we didn't have anything out there, and I kept saying for 12 years I was going to do this, and we never did. Have a sign made that said how you do the labyrinth, so that people could actually come use it. Now there'd be retreats there that were scheduled that would come, and of course they had a guide and had someone doing it, but we never put a sort of an instructional sign out there. And it was rather small too, I think. But one of the other churches in town built one outside on their grounds out of stones, and then they'd have like the rector there. He's still the rector there. Worked a lot in Canada, in the Anglican Church of Canada, with the indigenous people of Canada, or what we would call Native Americans here. And so he adopted a lot of these Native American or indigenous practices along with the labyrinth. So he'd have stones that you would carry in with you to place in the center and then come back out. And so that's, using other spiritual practices to add into what you do with the labyrinth.
Yeah, they're in that practice. I remember there was one up in the woods at that one camp, Oaks up north of town, up by
Tall Oaks?
Tall Oaks.
Is that it?
Is that up by Linwood, Kansas?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, beautiful. It's right in the woods. I don't know that I ever remember the discipline related to it, but whenever I do the labyrinth, I think of it as sort of like life's journey, because like I'm just looking at this pattern of this labyrinth here. You get close to God at times, and then you are taken farther away. And then you come close to the center, and you keep on circling back, getting closer and then further away. And then finally, you you arrive at the middle, and then and in the same way you take this sort of circuitous route away. And that's what I remember, just sort of the nearness and distance from God. I always thought of the labyrinth as that for me.
Mhm.
And it was sort of a metaphor for life. There are times that you feel close and there's times that you don't.
I have a printout here, and I'm not really sure who the group is that answers this, which isn't going to help us much if you want to know. But it says this, the modern, quote, rediscovery of the labyrinth and its use in church settings is celebrated by groups such as the Labyrinth Society and Veriditas, the Worldwide Labyrinth Project. According to these groups, the labyrinth is a, quote, divine imprint, a mystical tradition, a sacred path, and a sacred gateway. The stated purpose of Veriditas is to transform the human spirit, using the labyrinth experience as a personal practice for healing and growth, a tool for community building, an agent for global peace, and a metaphor for the blossoming of the spirit in our lives. That sounds like a lot to accomplish in that setting, but so it breaks it, those three stages up, just like last week we talked about the stages of Lectio Divina, and then the idea of chewing and savoring and all that. So it breaks it up like this. Veriditas says, walking a prayer labyrinth involves three stages: purgation, or releasing, that's the going in; illumination, or receiving, that's the being in the center; and then union and returning as you come out. Purgation occurs as one moves toward the center of the labyrinth. During this stage, one sheds the cares and distractions of life and opens his or her heart and mind. Illumination occurs at the center of the labyrinth. This is the time to receive what is there for you through prayer and meditation. And then union occurs as one exits the labyrinth and involves joining God, your higher power, or the healing forces at work in the world. So effectively the same thing, just a different concepts put on it, right? I always thought when I first kind of came across them that there was a specific way of doing it, and there is, but I thought there was a specific way of doing it in the sense that there were maybe a series of prayers that you would pray as you did it. And my thought was always, if I had something in my hand reading it, I would so not be able to walk on that line, that I would fall or I'd run into somebody.
Yeah, texting. Don't text in labyrinth.
Right, yeah. But the idea of letting go allows you to sort of look at your feet and see where you're walking and see where you're moving. So that's a much different thing to me. And I have done it, and I do enjoy it because, again, there is a physical movement to it. It involves the body in some way, right? Well, I mean, centering prayer involves the body too, but not in an active way. So let me see if I can pull some of these up.
There was one, and I can't remember where we were, but when we went on retreat, one year, the women, we did a spring retreat. We did like the wintry one, and then we did a spring one. And the spring one, I can't remember if it was Leavenworth or if it was that that place in Raytown.
Oh, yeah.
But somewhere they had a labyrinth, and I can't remember which one it was.
At the convent?
Yeah.
So here, this one here is like the one, Jeff, you held up that I guess the bookstore had.
Yeah, it's really interesting that one and the one in the middle on the top have that sort of crenellated border, just like the one at the lower
Here.
right. You know?
Yeah.
Yep. that sort of crenellated, I wonder if you counted those, if you'd come up with a significant number of notches in it.
I suppose, except they don't really play into the action as so much as they do the design, right?
No, they don't. But it is odd that those three are each crenellated in sort of a different way.
That's a new word to me. Crenellated.
Crenellated. I think of it as like it's an architectural feature.
Okay.
So notice in what we're looking at least in these little bits here, they're all circular. And the circle in and of itself is infinity, right? It has no beginning, no end. So you're within that circle. But I have seen some pictures of ones that are not circular. I wonder if we have
Really?
any on here. Yeah.
They're a square, aren't they?
We're gonna see. Well, that one's cool.
We used to have
That one's
square.
cool. The one that is almost off the page right there, that one with it mounded in the middle.
Here.
Yeah, that one is also mounted in the middle, yes. Oh, that colorful one is cool too.
Yeah, that is cool.
So here, I mean, this one is somewhat circular. I saw one earlier today, and that's what I'm not getting to it. That was almost like a leaf.
Ooh, that could be cool.
That was interesting looking.
It is a little bit like ours there. Those mats.
This one has writing inside of it. That's a
This one-
finger labyrinth, so you can read that. You can't see it, but you would read
Oh,
it
that's
if she
cool.
went through it.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you need to put in non-circular labyrinth.
Maybe. Let's see here. Let's write that in. Non.
Did we?
In the bookstore.
Oh, there was a square one in the bookstore.
It was probably 10 by 2.
Well,
No,
those look pretty circular.
they do indeed.
I don't know what I was looking at earlier today then that had that leaf looking one. It was very cool. Well, all right. I mean, it's still circular in a sense, but it's.
Wow.
Let's see what this.
Let's
So
go another labyrinth.
I'm Googling leaf labyrinth right now.
here's the one in Chartres. So that's the one that I guess you have
Oh, yeah.
with the crenellation on around the edge.
Yes.
Which is probably one of the ones most copied by everyone.
That's probably why this is looks the way it does.
So let's see then what Grace Cathedral in San Francisco looks like.
That's
It's
it.
it's the same.
It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then I had another one here. This particular one says, it's funny because it says the most famous prayer labyrinths today include an ancient one in the Cathedral of Chartres, France, another in the Cathedral of Duomo di Siena, Tuscany, and two maintained by Grace Cathedral, an Episcopal church in San Francisco. An Episcopal church, even though it says cathedral, they still say church. So let's look at
When I Googled leaf-shaped labyrinth, some cool ones came up.
You Googled what?
House leaf-shaped labyrinth.
Oh, so it did pull some up? Well, let's look at this
Uh-huh.
one. Well, that's the same one too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess that's a flower in the middle, sort of. All right, so you put in leaf shaped.
Oh, heart shaped.
Yeah, like that. There was one that showed up on my, because I did it on my phone first. But there's one that looks, yeah, I don't know if you guys can see it or not. It looks kind of like that. Let's see.
It looked to me like you couldn't actually get into the heart.
I know, that's the thing that I thought was kind of, it was interesting. It's
Look at
like,
the one with
That
the
one?
tree. Look at the one with the tree in the middle right there. Lower left-hand corner. Oh, oh, there. There you go.
All right, hang on. This one.
Yeah, there you go.
That's kind of cool with the tree in the center.
Isn't that
that
wild?
is cool.
That is wild.
Yeah, the big thing seems to be if it's like a heart. And then there's this one, which is really, really, I don't know if you can see it. But it's really Celtic. And I don't know how you go in and get out. Don't get lost. But it's shaped like a tree.
Here's one that's in the shape of a cross.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
There's a tree again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I lost it.
You're just requiring too much RAM.
We'll look at it there.
There you go.
Huh.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you get a bunch of different ones.
What I particularly like about that one that is on your screen right there is there is a cross in the middle that you find yourself in and that you would walk around before you would leave back out.
This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now you're in with the cross and walking around it before you depart.
Yeah. You have to
That's
go all the way
pretty
around.
We have had those times when we have the big cross in the nave at Maundy Thursday. Is it Maundy Thursday? Or is it Good Friday?
Good
Good
Friday.
Friday.
Friday with the big cross. And to be around a big cross like that laying on the floor is quite a moment.
Especially, yeah, especially when a bat comes swooping down. Do you remember that? It was pretty dramatic.
Well, we had it this year. It just, nobody was there except me and I guess Julie Brogno was still there reading for me.
Yeah, we almost always have, I mean, the bats come pretty frequently.
I have never seen a bat in the church.
Really?
Never.
Uh,
I've heard about them. I've seen their trail.
Yeah, I've seen what they leave behind, but I've not seen them.
like, wow.
All right, this one's a little different.
You know how you get rid of it.
Yes,
Oh,
it
that's
is. And are those leaves or rocks?
Yeah.
Look to be rocks, but I don't know. So when you rake your leaves in your yard, you could rake them in such a way that you could create a labyrinth.
Already planning on it. I'm going to do that.
That had not occurred to me until I Googled it, but I think it's an option.
That's a spiritual discipline in and of itself.
That's called making lemonade out of lemons.
Right.
Jim is really proud of his lawn. I bet that could be a new goal.
For whom, Linda?
For me, that would be worth it.
All right, so now let's, if it's okay, let's move to centering prayer. So who has had experience with centering prayer?
I fell
We tried,
asleep.
we tried it on retreat. I think I kind of had a similar outcome.
All right, so tell me, if you can, explain to me what you did, how it was. Not how it was, what you did. What was the practice?
I was joking. I don't think I've ever done it.
I just remember that we had, because throughout some of the retreats, they would have people that would say, try this. And, my recollection of it was literally, here's, I remember doing some breathing, and I remember that we were supposed to like hold a thought or whatever. And I was capable of the breathing part.
So, right, so centering prayer revolves around a mantra of some sort.
Yeah. My brain got bored.
And that may be, it may be a word, it may be a sentence. It's up, it's really up to you. If whoever's leading it might give you something, or what they'll do. So the way we did it, the practice is always the same. What we were given might differ when we started. So when I was a first-year seminarian, we did it in one of the classes we took. So we did it every time the class met for about 2 weeks of that semester. We did it, and we would do it for 20 minutes. You can do it longer, but typically it's 20 to 30 minutes. And so what you would do is you have to sort of position yourself. You're seated, and you're seated in a comfortable way with both feet on the floor, and your palms are usually open and up, like resting on your legs or something, so that you're in a position that's receptive, that you're able to receive. You're opening yourself to receive, right? So then the leader would read a piece of scripture, a relatively short piece of scripture, right? So let's say the Beatitudes, like we had on Sunday. So they might read that section, and what you're asked to do is whatever in that reading grabs you, hold that thought and think on that thought. And then there's silence for about 20 minutes. And what you're asked to do is just to sort of repeat that word, or that few words, or a sentence, or whatever you spoke to you, and just concentrate on that. Focus on those words and think about that. And to quiet the outside distractions, quiet everything else that's around you. And when you find yourself paying too much attention to the birds chirping or the cars driving by or whatever it is, you go back to that word or that phrase to keep you focused, right? And so the idea is that you are centering yourself, literally to open yourself to hear God and to hear what God will say to you through that verse, or through that word, or through the words that you are contemplating and speaking over and over in your mind. And then after about usually 20 minutes has gone by, the leader will then sort of bring you out of it by what we usually did is they would start to recite the Lord's Prayer. And as you hear it, then you would join in with it, so that by the end, everybody is then together and back out of the trance, the meditative trance. So that's the idea of it. And it was fostered by a group, Roman Catholic monks, one of them being Thomas Keating, if anyone's familiar with that name. He's probably the best known from that group. And then if you know the name Thomas Merton, Merton was a big component of what they taught within this movement of centering prayer and what Merton did. So I'm going to read you something that's from the website from, it's called contemplativeoutreach.org. So it says, centering prayer is a method of silent prayer that prepares us to receive the gift of contemplative prayer, prayer in which we experience God's presence within us, closer than breathing, closer than thinking, closer than consciousness itself. This method of prayer is both a relationship with God and a discipline to foster that relationship. Centering prayer is not meant to replace other kinds of prayer. Rather, it adds depth of meaning to all prayer and facilitates the movement from more active modes of prayer, verbal, mental, or affective prayer, into a receptive prayer of resting in God. Centering prayer emphasizes prayer as a personal relationship with God and as a movement beyond conversation with Christ to communion with him. The source of centering prayer, as in all methods leading to contemplative prayer, is the indwelling Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The focus of centering prayer is the deepening of our relationship with the living Christ. The effects of centering prayer are ecclesial, as the prayer tends to build communities of faith and bond the members together in mutual friendship and love. So centering prayer is not something that you can do by yourself. You have to have somebody sort of lead you in it, right? To sort of give you what you're going to focus on and then to bring you back out of it. If you do it by yourself, you could just fall asleep and wake up, 2 hours later or whatever. I guess is a form of prayer.
Well, at the
Jay
end,
calls it meditating.
Also a form of stirring.
Sometimes it involves snoring.
at the end, at the end of one of my favorite yoga teachers, at the end of, a lot of them do this, at the end of the class, you are silent for I don't know how many minutes. And so that you finally calm down and slow your breathing, and this person would generally lead us into that or give us something to focus on, a word. And then gently, after a while, bring us out of it so we're not startled. And
Right.
and a person that was pretty often right next to me, really every time would snore. So I would come out of it pretty quickly.
This is sounding more and more like my last visit. In fact, every visit I have to Massage Envy.
Mm.
And it ends up with me waking up with saliva dripping from the
Right. Yeah, but at least you feel better though. I mean,
Yeah.
and somebody saying, your time's up, you need to leave.
so when we did it in seminary, it was my first year, and we're in our classroom, and the teacher would lead us through it. Well, when we happened to be doing it, there was construction going on for the new chapel at the seminary at Swanee. So there was all kinds of noise, and the windows would be open, and we usually shut the windows to try to knock some of that down. But one particular day, I remember we're in the middle of it, and we're all focusing on our words, and we're in the middle of this contemplation, and some big construction machine dropped its load, whatever it had, steel beams or wood or whatever it was, dropped it, and there was this just very loud crash sound, and everybody jumped about 6 feet out of their chair because it scared everybody, and we all went, whoa. And the teacher was like, all right, let's pull it together. And we're like, no, we're not getting it back after that.
That's funny. At the end, during one of my yoga, I shouldn't take all the time, but during one of my yoga classes, and these classes were in the West Bottoms in the big livestock exchange building near the downtown airport. And I remember the time when everybody was all, we were all chilled, all relaxed. and the Blue Angels were
Oh.
rehearsing, and they flew
Oh,
right
wow.
over us, and people spat up, "Are we safe? Are we safe?" And I said, "Yeah, we're really safe." It was a moment like you had, Andy.
Yeah, but you know, it was funny. The guy who sat next to me, he would fall asleep every time we did it
Mhm.
and start snoring. But you know, when you think about it, when I have trouble falling asleep, like when I go to bed at night and have trouble falling asleep, I will pray. And I never finish the prayer because as I'm in the midst of that prayer, I fall asleep, right? So in a way that is in a sense correct in that you are totally relaxed and open and giving yourself over to that, right? I don't think that's what they want you to do in centering prayer, but you know, I guess when you're in bed, that's allowed.
What about Taizé? I mean, or are you getting into Taizé? What are your thoughts on Taizé?
I like it.
Yeah.
I've never experienced it. Let me say that differently. I've never been to a specific Taizé service where we've gone through it. I have seen bits and pieces of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people talk about how they conduct them.
Mm-hmm.
I have sung a great quantity of the Taizé community music.
Yeah.
So the music is very familiar to me, but I've never experienced it in the actual doing of the service itself.
Yeah, and I have been on a team that led it. It can be very powerful.
But I like it, and that's something again. But there's still involvement.
Yes.
It's not just shutting yourself down to listen. I mean, in the singing and the other things. I mean, yes, it's all this,
Mm-hmm.
the ostinato that you repeat while someone sings over it, which is beautiful.
And then combined with silence, which is probably the part you don't like, but
No, but in that setting, it works for me.
yeah.
For someone to just tell me you have to be quiet for X amount of time, that's the part I don't like. Unless I'm actively doing something, right? But silence in and of itself in the right place is absolutely wonderful.
We would use these as healing services, and so particularly people who had experienced, dramatic things or deaths in their family. I could see that it was really powerful. You were there. I think it was helpful to people, and it was calm.
And I would enjoy doing something like that.
Oh, good. Well,
or having that, yeah, I think that would be a nice offering.
Yeah, I've got all the music, so let me know.
Okay. And then in the same way, I would be open to, having someone come leave, centering prayer. It just wouldn't be me.
Who's the guy asleep in the back of the church? Oh, that's Andy.
Yeah.
Liam.
It just wouldn't be me, but I know people it is very important to them, and it's a very central to their own spirituality and to their own faith practice. And I am 100% for that. It's just not one that works for me.
It has a real monastic quality to it, doesn't it?
Well, because that's what it came out of. Yeah, absolutely, that's what it came out of. But then again, praying the offices daily is a monastic practice, right? And that I absolutely love. But there's a rhythm to it. There's a participation in it. And yes, you're participating in the silence. I get that, but it's in a different kind of way, right?
Yeah.
Well, with Taizé, it's the ambiance of lots of candles and making that the aura. It's very mystical, I guess. Is that the word? And
isn't that is interesting that we were talking about centering prayer being monastic, talking about very non-sensory, without the candles. And we were talking about the word discipline, Andy. It seems like something like centering prayer requires a certain level of discipline, a certain level of self-control.
Absolutely.
To be able to quiet yourself. And that's where, I guess that's where the monastic quality for me is entering in. The daily office requires memorization. It requires, concentration. But oftentimes it's just you in the Book of Common Prayer.
Right.
So it's it's very focused on that one point.
So speaking of the monastic life, so here's a little more history. The modern centering prayer movement in Christianity can be traced to several books published by 3 Trappist monks of St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts in the 1970s. Father William Menninger, Father M. Basil Pennington, and Abbot Thomas Keating. The name was taken from Thomas Merton's description of contemplative prayer, a much older and more traditional practice, as prayer that is, quote, centered entirely on the presence of God, unquote. In his book, Contemplative Prayer, Merton writes, monastic prayer begins not so much with considerations as with a return to the heart, finding one's deepest center, awakening the profound depths of our being. And then they say that these 3 Trappist monks who came up with centering prayer, what we know as centering prayer today, they trace their roots to the contemplative prayer of the desert fathers of early monasticism. And of course, the desert fathers would have been a Cenobitic monasticism, or that alone, as opposed to the commune style, right? Lectio Divina comes out of Benedictine monasticism. This comes out of the Desert Fathers and then Trappist monks. So they might contemplate, perhaps the Trappists are also contemplating the next beer they're going to brew.
Would Andy, would Augustine be considered a desert monk?
Which Augustine?
Oh,
Hippo?
Hippo, yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to check that. I would think so. Yes.
I mean, what when you say desert fathers, how far back are we going with that?
Basically back to Anthony of Egypt.
Okay.
Or
So
Anton of Egypt. That he's kind of the head of the Desert Fathers, if you will.
Is that like 300, 400, 500, or after that?
I'd have to look that up. I do think it probably is in the 300 range. I don't have a lesser feast and fast here to look up Antony or Augustine of Hippo to give me a date. You might be able to.
I was just wondering when that is. I was just wondering when that was, but I'll look it up.
Well, let's do this right here.
Which one is it? Is this it?
I think I was sharing that. Let me just try to share it now.
It's not doing anything.
It's something. Oh, sure.
I put in Desert Fathers.
Yeah. 3rd century.
3rd century AD. So 200s, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, Antony is sort of
Really?
the guru of all of that.
And that was even like pre-Nicaea.
Yeah, because Nicaea was 325, so it would have been early 4th century, right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes when you read it, especially in lesser feasts and fasts, people, they were sought after. People knew, you know, the cave they were in. They would go out to them to talk to them and to pray with them and to be with them to sort of gain some insight. Yeah, so Antony, here he is from 251 to 356. He lived to be over 100 years old.
Wow.
See, my church history is not with me like it was in seminary. Anyhow, you can read more on the Desert Fathers. I don't know if Augustine of Hippo would be in this or not.
No, he would be later than that. So
He
I
was
just
later than that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So there we are. Centering prayer. Now, Linda, you brought up Taizé. What other disciplines can you think of that we might want to explore next week?